The dust moved like a ghost across the broken path, whirling under a sky that never forgot how to burn. In the far corner of a forgotten desert village, beyond a fence made of dry, cracked wood, a man watched in silence. His eyes, darker than night before rain, narrowed at the sight unfolding before him. She was digging. Not with a shovel, not even with tools. Just her fingers, bruised, red, trembling, as they clawed through the sand and gravel like they'd done it before. Again and again, desperate, careful, fast. She didn't see him watching, or maybe she didn't care. Her hair was matted with dust, hanging around her face like a curtain drawn shut against the world. Her clothes were torn, stitched with threads of shame and survival, and she was young, too young to carry that kind of silence in her eyes. He didn't speak at first. The wind did, brushing against his collar, whispering something he couldn't understand. Only when she paused to hide a tin can under her scarf did he step forward, one boot crunching the gravel. Beneath it, "You looking for gold in that dirt?" he asked, dry as the desert air. She froze. Then she straightened, but not fully, just enough to raise her head. There was a second of panic in her eyes, but she didn't run. She just watched him with the sharp stillness of someone who'd had to measure every risk in life with hunger sitting at their side. "No, sir," she said, voice cracking like dried reeds. "Just crumbs." He studied her, then looked at the pit she had dug. An old trash heap, broken tins, dry rinds, bones chewed clean a year ago. "You from here?" he asked. "No." "Got people?" She hesitated. "Not anymore." The silence stretched between them like a broken bridge. He looked over his shoulder at the land behind him, his ranch, his horses, the smoke curling from the chimney where a kettle was always boiling. He had seen orphans before. He had buried his own mother in a dust storm not far from here. But something about this girl didn't scream for pity. She wore her pain like armor. She didn't ask for help. She just kept digging. He said 3 words. "You can stay." She blinked. His voice was still calm. "Just for the night. You can eat, wash your face. That's all." She didn't thank him, but she followed when he turned. Inside the ranch house. She sat at the edge of the wooden bench like she expected someone to scream at her for touching anything. When he placed a bowl of hot lentils in front of her, she stared at it like it might disappear if she blinked too long. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated, eyes flickering. "Lena." That wasn't the name he'd hear whispered by the wind later. That night she slept in the small storeroom by the back wall, curled into herself, one arm wrapped around the can she had hidden, beneath her scarf. He didn't ask, not yet. For 3 days, she stayed. Didn't speak much. Helped around the ranch like a ghost, watering the goats, sweeping the porch, feeding the firewood to the stove. She flinched every time a rider passed the fence, eyes always flicked toward the open road, like someone was coming. By the 4th day, he asked again, "Who are you running from?" She was peeling potatoes by the water barrel. Her hand stopped. She didn't look up. "I'm not." "Then why don't you sleep at night?" No answer. He set down the hammer he was holding. "I fought in the border skirmishes 5 years back. I know the look of someone who sleeps with one eye open. You talk in your sleep. You say his name." Her lips went pale. "Whose name?" He leaned in. "Tell me the truth, Lena." She stood, still calm, still broken. She looked at him then, like someone on the edge of a cliff, about to either fly or fall. "I was promised to a man twice my age. My father signed the papers without telling me. He owed them blood money. When I cried, he told me to smile louder. When I screamed, he told me it was tradition. On my wedding night, I ran." The wind howled through the cracks in the door, like it remembered her voice from somewhere. He didn't speak. Not yet. She pulled up her sleeve. There were lash marks, fresh, faint. Some had healed in crooked lines, some hadn't. I ran into the mountains. I drank muddy water. I stole food from shrines. I made it here because no one looks in the desert, no one but vultures and ghosts. He stared at the girl who had once been someone's daughter, someone's promise. What's in the can? She didn't move. Then slowly she unscrewed it and poured the contents into her palm. A folded photograph, torn, burnt at the edges. Woman's face. And a small boy with curly hair beside her. That's not me, she said. That's my sister. They killed her when she tried to stop the wedding. The boy was her son. He's missing, or dead. I don't know. And then she looked at him, not like a beggar, not like a girl, but like someone asking the desert itself for a miracle. If I stay, will they find me? He didn't answer. Because at that very moment, the sound of hooves broke the horizon. Two, many for a trading caravan. Too fast for hunters. Too angry for anything but one thing. They were coming. And the sky turned the color of blood before the first shot was fired. The first bullet struck the barn wall, sending splinters flying like angry bees. Horses neighed in terror, their hooves stomping against the dry earth. Inside the ranch house, the man grabbed his rifle from the nail behind the door, his jaw set like a man who had buried too many sins to fear dying now. Lena didn't scream. She didn't run. She simply stood frozen by the water barrel, her hand still wrapped around the photograph, as if letting go of it would break the last thread holding her together. Inside, the man barked. Now. But she didn't move. He looked at her, really looked, and saw something he hadn't noticed before. The girl wasn't afraid of dying. She was afraid of being taken back alive. He crossed the yard in 2 strides and yanked her into the house, slamming the door just as another shot hit the fence post. Dust trickled from the ceiling. Somewhere outside, a voice called out, "Give her up, rancher! She belongs to us!" It wasn't a request, it was a verdict. He peeked through the crack in the shutter. 5 men on horseback. One wore the red scarf of the Bakir clan, the tribe known for settling debts with blood. Another chewed something between his teeth, grinning like a jackal waiting for his turn at a wounded lamb. He cocked the rifle. "You know them?" She nodded slowly. "The man with the red scarf is Rehan Bakir. My father traded me to his brother." His voice was steady. "How many more?" "Maybe 10, maybe more. They don't all come at once. They watch. They wait until you sleep." He looked at her. "Then we won't sleep." Outside, the gang started circling the house like vultures waiting for the meat to go still. One man rode forward and hurled a sack at the porch. It hit the wood with a dull thud. The rancher opened the door just enough to pull it inside. It wasn't a threat. It was a warning. Inside the sack was a dead dog. The same street dog Lena had been feeding behind the fence 2 nights ago. She dropped to her knees, eyes wide, breath thin. But she didn't cry. "They saw me," she whispered. They watched even then. He knelt beside her, the heat from the day still clinging to the floorboards. "You said you don't know where your sister's boy went." "No." "What if that's why they really came?" he said slowly. "What if it's not just about dragging you back? What if that boy saw something he wasn't supposed to?" Her voice cracked. "He's only 5. "Exactly." He stood and moved toward the cellar door. "We have 1 rifle, 8 bullets, enough to buy us a few hours." She looked up. "They'll burn it down. Let them try." That night, the house became a graveyard for old noises, creaks, groans, whispers of smoke curling under the eaves. He nailed boards across the windows, lined the doors with barrels. She helped, silent and precise. like someone who had survived sieges before. And still, they didn't come. Not yet. At midnight, he gave her a flask of water and said, "Sleep for an hour. I'll watch." But she didn't lie down. She simply sat near the cellar and stared into the dark. And then, as if the silence gave her permission, she finally spoke. "There's something I didn't tell you." He didn't turn, just listened. "The boy, my sister's son, his name is Adam. They weren't supposed to know she had him. She was hiding him after running from her husband. But someone told. The night she died, she told me to take him to the shrine by the river. I did. I left him there. But when I came back 2 days later, he was gone." The rancher finally turned. "You think they took him?" "I think they know I know where he might be." He stared at her, at the blood still crusted on the scar, near her wrist, at the steel that hadn't broken even now. Then he did something she didn't expect. He handed her the rifle. Her fingers trembled. "You'll learn," he said. "Because this is the kind of land where even the wind carries knives." Then the silence broke. A scream, short and sharp, echoed from beyond the hill. The rancher stepped onto the porch and saw a body tied to a post. A young man, beaten, eyes swollen shut, barely breathing. A paper pinned to his chest. She fed. "The dog. This is what we'll do to anyone else who helps her." The rancher read it, then stepped back inside and bolted the door. "We have till dawn." She clutched the rifle. "And after that?" His voice was low. "We make them pay." She looked up at him. "Even if I die?" He met her eyes. "No. Especially if you die." And as the fire in the stove dimmed to glowing coals, a second flame lit somewhere deeper, behind her ribs, in the cracks where hope used to hide. This time, it wasn't fear. It was rage, cold and patient, and it would wait for morning. The first stone hit the window just before dawn, then another, then fire. The rancher had barely blinked when the front porch lit orange from a burning oil rag tied around a thrown bottle. It shattered against the door frame, flames licking up, the wood like hungry tongues. Smoke crawled through the cracks, thick and angry. He stamped out what he could, then turned to Lena. "Get to the back wall. Stay low. Aim only if you must." She didn't hesitate. Not anymore. Outside they were shouting, names, curses, threats. Someone fired into the air, the bullet cracking through the morning silence like a whip on bare skin. "We know you're—" "In there, girl!" one of them bellowed. "Come out now, and the man walks free." Another voice, older, rougher, snarled. "He ain't one of us! Why should he burn for you?" The rancher loaded another round into the rifle. "They're getting impatient." Lena gripped the weapon tighter. "So let them make a mistake." He looked at her, her jaw set, her hands steady, and nodded. She was no longer the girl clawing for scraps. She was steel now, hardened by the fire she had once run from. They waited. The back door rattled, footsteps in the dust. Someone tried the handle. The rancher opened the side window just enough and fired once. Clean shot. A man screamed, fell. Another shouted, "He's at the west side! Circle around!" Too late. They had underestimated him, and they had misjudged her. Lena took her first shot that morning. Shaky, off-center, but it tore through the sleeve of a rider trying to set fire to the stables. He fell backward off his horse. The others scattered. They weren't used to resistance. They weren't used to being hunted back. But this wasn't just any land. This was his land. And now it was hers too. For 2 hours, they held the ranch. 2 bullets left. 1 for each of them. And then, as the sun began to crest over the ridge, a strange quiet fell. No more shouting, no more fire, just wind and hoofbeats. Not many this time. One rider. Alone. He stopped at the edge of the broken fence, rode in, slowly, casually, like a man who had already made peace with blood. Rayhan Bakir. Lena froze. Her breath hitched. Her grip on the rifle loosened. "That's him," she whispered. The rancher stepped between her and the window. "What does he want?" "Not me," she said. "Not exactly." Rayhan dismounted, walked toward the porch, arms out. "I came alone," he called. "Not to fight, just to talk." The rancher narrowed his eyes. "Talk fast." Rayhan didn't. Smile. "You're brave. I'll give you that. But not smart. You don't know who she really is." "I know enough." "No, you don't," Rayhan said, lifting something from his coat. A necklace. Tarnished silver. But the pendant, it was unmistakable. A child's trinket. Lena gasped. "Where did you get that?" she said, voice cracking. Rayhan looked at her, finally looked at her. "From the boy." The rancher stepped forward. "Adam?" Rayhan nodded. "He's alive. He's been in our camp for weeks. We were going to use him to trade for her, but now." He glanced around the burned yard, the dead men in the dirt, the blood on the fence posts. "Now maybe I don't need to." Lena's eyes filled, but not with relief, with fury. "What did you do to him?" Rayhan's voice turned cold. "Nothing. Yet. But he's clever. Too clever. He heard things he shouldn't, saw things between our tribe and the smugglers from the north. We can't let that boy speak." The rancher raised the rifle. Rayhan smiled. "You shoot me? The boy dies before sunset. You let me walk away? Maybe I forget this place ever existed." Silence. Then Lena stepped forward. Her voice was hollow. "I'll come with you." "No," the rancher snapped, but she looked at him with something ancient in her eyes. "This is the only way." Rayhan's grin returned. "Now you're thinking clearly." She walked to the porch, but her hand brushed the hidden pocket sewn into her dress. The rancher noticed. A knife, small, silent. Rayhan reached out to grab her arm, and in that second, everything changed. Lena lunged. The blade sliced across Rayhan's side, deep, clean, sharp. He staggered back, screaming. The rancher fired once, missed on purpose, but the sound scattered the birds and brought the other gang members running from the ridge. Lena turned and ran, to the stables, to the second horse, to freedom. Rayhan collapsed, blood pouring from his side. The gang halted at the sight of their leader dying in the dust, and before they could decide whether to chase or help, the rancher raised his hands. "Ride now," he shouted, "or the boy dies for nothing." They hesitated, then scattered. Not for him, for fear of the truth Adam carried. By the time they looked back, Lena was already gone, horse galloping toward the east, toward the river, toward the shrine where the truth had first gone missing. She would find the boy. She would bring him home, even if it meant burning the desert behind her. The wind howled across the open desert like a warning too old to be heard. Lena's horse stumbled once, then regained balance, the path narrowing between thorny shrubs and broken stones. Blood stained her side, Rayhan's blood. Her hands were cut from the reins, her eyes burned from dust, but her heart was on fire. She rode east, past the dried-up wells and ghost villages, until the river came into view, a thin silver snake winding through cracked earth. There, beside the shrine of the old Sufi saint, she dismounted, and there she saw him. A small boy, crouched under the fig tree, dusty, barefoot, clutching a broken toy horse made of leather and string. His eyes were wide, but not with fear. "Adam," she whispered. He looked up. "Auntie." She fell to her knees. He ran into her arms. She held him so tightly she thought her bones would break. She pressed her face into his neck and sobbed, loud, raw sobs that scared even the birds from the trees. "I thought I lost you," she breathed. "I waited," he said softly. "I kept the necklace. I didn't tell them anything." She pulled back, studied his face. Bruises under his eyes, a scratch on his cheek, but his soul, unbroken. He pointed at the shrine. "That man helped me." She looked and saw an old fakir sitting cross-legged, head bowed, as if waiting for no one and everyone all at once. She approached him slowly, the boy's hand in hers. "Thank you," she said. The fakir opened one eye. "I didn't save." "Him," he said. "He saved himself. Some children are born with old hearts." She sat beside him. "They'll come back for him." "Yes," he nodded, "but they won't find him here." She frowned. "What do you mean?" He lifted his hand and pointed to a caravan moving on the ridge, slow, hidden, tribal women, old men, families of the south. "They came at dawn," the fakir said. "Refugees from a burned village. They lost everything. They will take him, raise him as their own. He will be safe." Lena looked at the boy. "But he's mine." The fakir's voice softened. "Then give him what only love can give. Freedom." Tears welled in her eyes. She turned to Adam, knelt in front of him. "Do you want to go with them?" she asked. He hesitated. "Will you come too?" She smiled painfully. "Not this time." "Why?" She pulled out the pendant, hung it around his neck. "Because they'll chase me," she said. "And as long as they think I have you, they'll keep chasing." His lip trembled. "But I'm scared." She kissed his forehead. "Be brave, Adam. Brave like your mother. Brave like your name." He hugged her tight, too tight, and then let go. The fakir stood, raised his hand, and the caravan slowed. Two women stepped down and took Adam's hand gently. He looked back once, and then he was gone. Lena stood alone under the fig tree. The wind rustled the leaves, and for the first time in years she felt something lift from her chest. She didn't know where she would go next, but she knew what she had done. Far behind her, the ranch smoldered. Rehan Bakir was dead. His clan was leaderless. The rancher had bought enough time for her to escape, and in the silence that followed, she had made a choice no tribe could undo. She had given up the one thing she loved, to protect it. That night, word spread. Not from lips, but from footprints, from smoke trails, from the trembling stories of those who had watched from behind broken shutters. They called her mad. They called her dangerous. But the fakir had other words. "She gave up her blood," he said, "so the boy could keep his name clean." And then he whispered the lesson to a weaver who stitched it into cloth, and a bard who sang it under a mountain moon. Kindness returns, multiplied, but only when it costs you everything first. And somewhere, across the desert, a woman in torn clothes walked barefoot through the dust, unarmed, unnamed, unafraid. Her past chasing her like a shadow she no longer feared. She did not look back, because heroes in stories usually ride away. But this one walked, and the wind bowed to her. The road east was dry and bitter, and Lena's footsteps left no prints on the wind-hardened ground. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. She hadn't slept in 3. But her body moved like it remembered a rhythm her heart had forgotten. Forward. Always forward. By the 7th sunrise, she reached the edge of the salt basin, where the mountains met the desert, and the sky looked too big for any one woman to carry. She collapsed beside a broken well and drank the brackish water without care. She was no longer running. She had simply become a ghost the world didn't recognize. But the world wasn't done with her yet. A cart passed, slow. Wooden wheels, groaning under sacks of grain and a single, silent driver. An old man with eyes too sharp to be blind. He stopped, watched her, then offered his hand without a word. She climbed in. They didn't speak for hours. Finally, he asked, "How far?" "Are you going?" "As far as I have to," she replied. He grunted. "That's a good answer." She turned her face to the wind. "You know who I am?" "I know who you were," he said, "but not who you'll become. That depends on how long you can keep walking without breaking." She closed her eyes. When she opened them, the mountains were closer, and so was the storm. By the time they reached the pass, it was raining ash, not from the sky but from the burned village just beyond the ridge. Bodies, homes, even the mosque had been torched. The cart stopped. The old man pointed. "That's where your story ends, if you stay silent." She looked around. Who did this? He didn't answer. He didn't need to. On the blackened walls, someone had painted in red mud. "She lives, she speaks, she burns." They were still looking for her. Not just the smugglers, not just the broken gang. Now the tribal council itself wanted her silenced for what she had seen, for what Adam had known, for what the shrine's old fakir might yet reveal. The truth was afire, and she was carrying the match. That night, Lena stood before the ruins and felt her legs shake, not from fear, but from fury. They would keep burning villages, keep silencing mouths, until someone louder answered back. And so she turned to the old man. "I need to find the rancher." He raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Because we're not finished." The next day, she left the cart and walked alone to the northern ridge, where the river splits and the vultures circle. There, under the ruins of a mesquite tree, she found him. Alive, but barely. His arm was in a sling, his face scarred, his eyes sunken from infection and weeks without real rest. But when he saw her, he stood. "You found him," he said. She nodded. "And I lost him again, but not without purpose." He stepped closer. "You're not running anymore." "I'm hunting now." They didn't speak of the past. They didn't need to. She showed him a letter, smuggled to her by a child. From a river tribe. It was signed in code, but she knew the handwriting. Adam had remembered. Names, faces, the secret tunnel under the council chamber, the ledger with every bribe paid in salt and stolen girls, everything they needed to destroy, the corruption buried in tribal law. The rancher read it twice, then looked up. "This will get you killed." "Not if we get to it first," she said. His hand brushed hers. And for the first time, they didn't flinch. They didn't need to ask if the other would stay. They had both already sacrificed too much to ever leave again. The plan was simple. The execution would be anything but. But as they sat beneath the broken tree, watching the horizon catch fire with the morning sun, there was no fear left. Only the quiet promise of reckoning. The mountain wind was colder than before, the kind of cold that didn't touch skin. It burrowed into the bones. Lena stood before the fire, staring at the map Rehan had drawn in charcoal. Behind her, the rancher, his arm still bandaged, his gait uneven, tightened the saddle straps. "Once." "We go in," he said. "There's no going back." She didn't turn. "That was true the moment I handed Adam over to the caravan." He paused. "You never told me why you really gave him up." She looked down at her hands, scarred, blistered, the fingers still shaking at night. Because I was turning into the kind of woman who would kill for him, she whispered. And I didn't want him raised by a mother full of blood. That silence between them was heavier than anything the mountains could throw. By sunset, they moved. There were no banners, no horses in formation, just two ruined souls riding toward the lion's mouth. The tribal court was gathering that night, a rare moon circle session, called only in times of dispute or crisis. The chieftains would be present. The smugglers would stand in the shadows, pretending to be guards. And the holy man who had once sworn his loyalty to truth would offer blessings he no longer believed. But Lena had the ledger, and the rancher had something better, a confession. They reached the edge of the tribal courtyard just before midnight. Hidden behind crumbling stone, they watched torches flare to life. Men in embroidered shawls, women behind veils, the chief in his golden turban, his eyes like dead stones. A drumbeat started. The voice of the judge thundered, "Tonight we clear our bloodlines of shame." A cheer rose. But then, a scream, a single short cry from the gate, and Lena stepped into the firelight, not with a veil, not with fear, but with the bloodied ledger held high, her voice louder than any drum. "You want to talk about shame?" she shouted. "Then start with the girls you sold like cattle." Chaos. Men stood. The chief roared. But she didn't stop. She opened the book, read names, buyers, sellers, sons of noble families, guards who had taken coin to stay silent. She read until her throat was raw. And then the rancher stepped forward, his rifle slung but unloaded, and tossed something into the fire. It was a pendant, Adam's pendant, the one Lena had left him. "They think the boy is dead," he said. "But he isn't. And he remembers everything, including what the chief's brother did to his mother before she hung herself from a fig tree." A gasp swept through the crowd. The chief lunged forward, but before he could reach Lena, the rancher fired into the air. Once, twice, the silence that followed was pure. "I want a trial," Lena said. "A real one, under the old laws. Let the people hear the truth." But the truth has enemies. From the rear, a man in black rushed forward, dagger drawn. Too fast, too close. Lena turned too late. But the rancher didn't. He stepped in front of her. The blade sank deep into his stomach. He didn't cry out. He just looked at her, eyes calm, as if he'd always known it would end this way. She caught him as he fell. Blood soaked through his shirt, through her hands, into the earth. Around them, the crowd erupted, half screamed, half fought. Someone grabbed the judge, another took the chief. And in the confusion, the old fakir arrived, pushed through the crowd like smoke. He laid a hand on the rancher's chest, then looked at Lena. "He won't live," he said softly. "But his truth will." Lena pressed her forehead to the dying man's. "Why?" she wept. "Why would you take the blade meant for me?" He smiled faintly. "Because for the first time, I had something worth dying for." The last breath left him like a wind, giving up the storm. She held him long after he was gone. When the sun rose, the tribal court had been overturned. The chief imprisoned. The ledgers copied and shared in every village. And the tale of a woman who brought down kings with truth and loss began to take root like a fire that would never burn out. But she didn't stay. She buried the rancher beneath the fig tree where she had once knelt to Adam. She left no marker, just a single stone painted red with blood and clay. And then she walked east again. No map, no name, no promises. But everywhere she went, people whispered her story, not with fear, with awe. A woman alone. A woman wronged. A woman who walked into fire to protect a child not her own, and gave up her only love to keep truth alive. Some say she became a ghost, others a goddess. But the fakir who knew her best once said this. "Justice," he whispered, "never arrives in gold or armor. Sometimes it comes barefoot, with scars. And kindness returns, multiplied, always."